Hi folks, okay, another video on hacking Ethereum smart contracts, in which I will not be hacking any Ethereum smart contracts. What I wanted to talk about was kind of the development environment, or the environment in which I'm going to use to interact with smart contracts going forward. One thing I struggle with constantly is what version of the Web3 library I'm working with. So it kind of, every website seems to be on a different version, and there are big changes between version 1.0, which is still in beta, and then the earlier 0.26, and prior to that, APIs for Web3. So let me just show you quickly what I mean. So here is the Ethernaut website, right? So if I open up the console and I go web3.version, you'll see that this is on 19.1. And if I open up the Remix browser, I go in here, I go web3.version. I'll see I'm on 1.0 beta 27. Under the hood, I have web3.version. This is on 0.2 or 20.3, and you kind of see it's a bit frustrating when you've got, within kind of such a short span of time, 1, 2, 3 completely different versions of the Web3 library. And I think the challenge is then, you know, the changes between the libraries mean you have to be interacting with things in different ways. And if you're fighting against just the API in the first instance, how can you kind of get around to actually learning anything meaningful? And what will happen is you'll get quite frustrated and you'll stop, or you'll give up, or it'll kind of kill your flow, whatever way you want to put it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a way to kind of create a different environment where you can control what version of Web3 you're using, and then you can interact with all the Ethernaut challenges from a local command line on the Ropsten test network. So, okay, the way we're going to do that is we're going to use what's called a read eval print loop, okay? And we're going to create our own kind of command prompt, and we'll load in the Web3 library, and then we will instantiate it with our wallet, and then connect it to the Ropsten network, and then create the contracts, and then interact with the contracts that way. And we'll be able to see kind of the slightly different way in which you can interact with the same contract, both from Ethernaut, from Remix, and then from the command line. Just read print loop node. Okay, so I'm going to use node for this demonstration, and I'm going to use TypeScript as well. I just prefer TypeScript. I find the kind of autocomplete in the typed language easier to work with, so I'm not, again, fighting against unknown APIs. I kind of get the hints in the IDE as I'm going. Okay, so without further ado, we need to put some music on. Okay, good copyright-free EDM. Not that good, but I don't get muted the whole time, which may or may not improve the video. Okay, let's just close this. Leave site for now. Gonna just, let's say we'll open up the delegation one, which is one I'm at. I'm going to get a new instance here. Okay, approve this transaction. Alert, transaction error, thrown in contract code. Perfect. Let me just hard reload this. Do it again. Okay, we'll come back to this in a minute. Well, let's do token instead, actually. Seems to be a bit annoying. Okay, so here's my project. So like I said, I want to use TypeScript, and I want to use REPL from Node. So I'm just going to yarn add a bunch of things at the start here. So I have TypeScript, which is, if you're not familiar with it, a superset of JavaScript, but it's typed. I'm going to use TS Node rather than just typical Node, and what that means is I don't have to compile the TypeScript in the background and then execute a Node command. I can just execute TypeScript files directly on TS Node. I want to bring in Web3. I also want the types for Node and the types for Web3. If you don't know what any of this stuff means, then go look it up. Okay, so that will install my dependencies. Twiddle your thumbs. Come on, internet. Well, that's going. What I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna get a new instance here. This is quite annoying. Okay, so let that go away in the background. Okay, so TypeScript is now installed. Next step is to init my project. Okay, so I can't just do TSE because TypeScript, I didn't install it globally. I need to do npx to execute it in my local file, and then I've got a tsconfig, and if you want, you can go and play around with stuff in here, but we're not going to do that for now. Inside package, what I want to do here is I want to create a script. I'm just going to call my script start. And what I'm going to execute is ts node, and then I'm going to create a file. Let's call it hack nice.ts. Okay, so I better create that file, hack.ts. And in here for now, I'm just going to console.log hacker nice. Sweet. So yarn start, good, and it printed it out. So as I expected it to. Okay, next bit is you don't want to. So I'm going to need to get the private key for my my account. So it would do something like const private key, and I'm going to put it in here. Blah blah blah. The problem with keeping it inside our source file directly is that's horrible security practice. You want to separate the secrets from the code. The way we do that is just going to throw it into an environment file, and then I'm going to read it in with something called .env. So I need to add that as well. .env. Okay, so .env, what it'll do is it'll process this .env file and read in the variables I define here into the process environment. So I'm going to have two environment variables I care about. One's going to be the infra, and we'll get to that in a minute, endpoint. It's going to be an HTTP endpoint, and then we're going to use an account private. Actually, let's call it private key for now. Private key for simplicity, okay? And that's going to be my a private key associated with the Ethereum account I'm using. So for now, we'll go like that. So essentially what I want to be able to do is something like this. So console.log process.env. That's going to print out what's in my process environment. Oh, that's not what I wanted to do. So yarn start. Okay, you can see these are all the environment variables I have, but I don't see those two I've just defined. The way I'm going to read them in with that .env file is you can do it two different ways. You can go const .env equals, actually we're in node, so I'll do import .env equals from .env, then .env.config. Okay, don't really like doing this because then it's kind of, you need the logic for reading in the environment variables directly in your script. So not that great. I prefer to do it as a require at the top level here. So require module.env/config. And now this will load it in so that when hack.ts actually executes, these environment variables will already be available. So I'm going to start that again. You can see here's my infra endpoint, and my private key is an environment variable. And so what I'm going to do is, why don't we pull those out? Const infra endpoint and private key. I can't really. Why can't I type endpoint? P-O-I-N-T. Okay, so right now it's giving me errors because I have in my tsconfig I have strict true. I'm just going to go to false. Well, actually no. Let's do it proper. Okay, so I'm going to create an equal sign here as well. Okay, no, I got it. It knows that it's a string. Okay. Great. Okay, so the next step is now creating that. Let's get rid of this hacker prompt here. Is creating that repo, the read evaluate print loop. So we need to import the repo library from Node.js, so it'll be in repo, and then all we need to do is repo.start, give it a prompt that we want to display. So for now, let's just use an arrow. And then if I go yarn start over here, I get an arrow. And so now I can do things like console.log, hello, and it does exactly that. .exit gets me out of there. So this prompt is pretty boring. Let's do something way cooler. Ethereum symbol. If I could type, which is this bad boy, and put a space there. Then what I also want to do, excuse me, is add in some global variables inside that the prompt environment. So the way we do that is we go const r is equal to this r.context, and then I can put any sort of variable in. So name, for example, I could just say Tim or time, And now inside my command prompt, I could type time, and it would print out that, or correction, I could type name, and it would print out Tim. So this is where we're going to bring in Web3. So let's import Web3 from Web3. Okay. And what I'm going to do now is instantiate const Web3 is equal to new Web3. I'm going to give it the infra endpoint. Okay. And then I'm going to create the accounts inside that Web3 instance. So web3.eth, what I'm going to do, well, one, you can see how great it is that I have proper autocomplete here, right? So I don't have to really guess, and I've got some kind of quick write out of what's actually there. Let's open up the Web3. Okay, so not contract. I don't know why it keeps jumping there. So accounts. Inside accounts, I have a wallet, and inside the wallet I can add, okay? And that's where I'm just going to give it the private key or account object. So I can create one if I want to. I don't actually want to create one right now. I want to import the same ones I'm using in MetaMask. So, well, you can do that. Details, and then I can export private key. And I'm going to grab my private key. Don't worry, I don't actually use these accounts for anything other than demo purposes. So don't think it's going to be the end of the world if you see this and you go steal my 1 Ether from the test network. Please don't use these accounts yourself because they're not secure. Okay, so here's my private key. One other thing to notice is you need to append 0x at the start here, show that it's hexadecimal. Now I need the inferior endpoint. So the reason that's going to let us connect into the Ethereum network. I could run a load locally if I wanted to. So if I was going to run like a Docker image of a local blockchain, I could point it to localhost and then the port number. But what I want to do is actually connect to the Ropsten network, and I don't really want to run a load locally. So infra to the consensus project, I think. I can get an endpoint from them, create an account, it's free, and then copy that endpoint, put that variable in here. Don't worry about this. Again, this is just for this project, so I'll just deactivate it shortly. Okay, so now what should happen is I will actually get a connection to Web3, and r.context.web3 equals Web3. Okay, and I can do things if I wanted to make my life easier. I'd go context.eth equals Web3.eth. Can't type. And then I wouldn't have to type Web3 every time. So let's, well, I don't leave that actually. Okay, web3.accounts.wallet.add, and then we're going to give it this private key. Okay, and the other thing I want to do, why is that giving me a problem? Okay, so it's basically saying up here it's defined as a string or undefined, and here it's saying it can only take type string, not the union of string or undefined. So you can go, there's lots of different ways we can do this. Let's, how do we want this? Let's just get rid of strict type checking. False. Easiest way is to cheat. There we go. Don't quite know why you're giving me that ish. Process CNV. Cannot find infra endpoint. Oh yeah, I would have to do it separately. The syntax is a bit frustrating. Web3 ETH accounts.wallet.add private key. Is it that way? Okay. So just casting it here, telling it. There's a couple ways you can get around this, right? So one, I could do that casting. I could do string here, or I could just tell the TypeScript compiler to ignore this. So at ts ignore, and it'll ignore the next line, and then this would be fine like that. Now, what I typically do is I declare the shape of this process.env, and then I say that there is going to be a private key with the string in it, and then it'll cascade through, and then this wouldn't have an issue. Whereas right now, it's thinking it can be a string or it can be undefined, and this can only take something of type string. So let's just cast it. Okay, good. Starter. Come on. Okay, so now I can do eth, and I've got eth. I can do eth.net.getID, I think. Right? It gives me a promise. So I can go then console.log, and I should get 3. Okay, that's the Roxton network, which is exactly what I want. The other thing I should be able to do is I should be able to go eth.accounts.wallet@0.address, and I should see the address I had in MetaMask. So if I go back over here, let's close this stuff, keep that open for now. MetaMask, my account 1, 777B, right? 777 Bravo, and over here we see 777 Bravo. Okay, so now I've got a Web3 environment that I've created, which I can now, set what version of Web3 I want to use. So in package, I could say, yarn add Web3 at 100 beta 21, for example, or really whatever I want. And now I have more control over what's going on, and I'm not kind of subjected to Remix having a different version of Web3 than Ethernaut. Okay, so the next step is how am I going to interact with these contracts, right? So I have a contract in here. Okay, and because this is, like I said, Web3, I think 19 dot something version, 19.1, this is going to interact with contracts in a different way than Web3 1.0 is going to interact with contracts. So what I need to do is create a new contract, all right? And the contract takes a JSON interface, which is the ABI, so the API but at a lower level, the address that it's deployed at, and then any options I want when interacting with that contract. So for example, what account to send it from, what to pay for gas, how much is the maximum gas, and then any data if I was, for example, deploying the contract. I'm not deploying it because it's already deployed, I just want to interface with it. So I basically just got to do this, put all the little bits for JSON interface, address and options in here, and then I should be able to call methods on that contract. So where the hell do I get all that stuff, right? So I could just go contract.abi, and there's the ABI here for the contract, the token contract. I could take this code, I could open up a Remix IDE. So let's just put it in here. Why are you complaining? Oh yes, so compiler version set at 4.18. So let's go back to 4.18. Come on. Okay, start to compile. So that now compiled it. I can copy the ABI here. Okay, so that's copy ABI. I can open up details, and I can see in here kind of how to deploy it with Web3. Notice that this is a different version of Web3 than I'm using because it's got a lowercase c. But what this is here is the actual ABI itself as well. So let's just grab the API, click that button, copy that to a string, and you'll be able to see it here. that is the API. If I want it slightly cleaner, I'll just grab this whole line, okay? Get my ABI. So var ABI equals that. Okay. Now let's just make that available as a variable. Clear is not, yeah. So ABI, there's my ABI. What other bits do I need from it? I needed the address it's at, and then any options. Okay, so address, var address, is going to be where it's deployed to, right? What contract I want to send stuff to, which is contact.address, and it's a string. Okay, the last one is options. So for options, I have from, so which account to send from, the gas price, and the maximum gas to send. So from is quite easy because I've imported that account here. So let's go var options equals, so actually, let's break this down a little more. So var from, if I could type, and I'm going to go eth.accounts.wallet@0.address from, there we go. I now want var gas price. How much do I want to pay for gas? And what I'm going to do in this instance is just open up MetaMask. Okay, let's do a transaction with MetaMask, and we're going to copy the gas prices and limits from that. So contract, what do we got? Bounce of, that's just a view. We want something that's going to mutate state. Contract dot transfer. Let's just take this random. Well, it's not random. Let's just give it some Okay, here's my MetaMask contract. If I go into edit, I can see under advanced the gas limit that's going to go with that and the gas price. Okay, so I will just steal these values. So what's the gas limit for this is, we'll go a bit higher than that. So gas, let's go 100,000. This is just testing. In reality, you wouldn't want to just kind of nonchalantly put in a number there, because if you put it too high, you're going to lose money if someone wanted to exploit you. Gas price. Okay, so the gas price was in Gwei. So you saw that was 2.2 Gwei in that MetaMask thing. So what I need to do is convert that now to 2.2 Gwei to Wei, right? So Web3 utils in here. If I did tab twice and that brought all this up, I want 2 Wei, right? 2 Wei. I think I can just do maybe need a string. Okay, now that's in Gwei. So I can go var gas price equals that. Okay, so var options is then going to have from gas and gas price in it. So options, ABI, and address. Okay, that was about right. The next step is to create that contract itself, that contract object. The way I do that, so let's go var contract equals eth.contract, and sorry, it's going to be a new, more like an object now, right? ABI, address, and options. Okay, so hopefully on contract now, I can see the ABI. If I go methods, what I should see are those methods on that contract. So transfer, balance of, and the reason you see because you have 3 different ways of calling each of these methods, right? I can call it by its name, I can call it by its keycat hash, the SHA hash of the actual name, or I can call it by, I think something like this, contract.methods, methods, something like this maybe. I'm not sure, I'm still learning. Yeah, which is not really how I want to do it. Anyway, so these are my methods now. Sorry. These are the methods, and let's just now call a balance of on it to show that it works. So contract.methods.balance of, I need to execute that, and then what I'm going to do is I can do call or I can do send. Send is for sending a transaction, and call is just for reading a value, which is what I want in this instance. Where do I put the parameters? I can't remember. Let's jump back here. So call. So you see I put the parameters with the method, and then call to actually send the call out to the network. Well, it's not transacting; it's just reading state, so it doesn't need to be broadcast to the network. Okay, so my method, what did I care about here? Balance of, and let's just do eth dot. Actually, let's just make a var my addy, and we'll go eth dot accounts dot wallet at 0 dot address. Okay, if I could spell accounts. Okay, my ID. Great. So grab that. Balance of my ID. Okay, that's right. So it gives me a promise. Now if I just go then console.log, okay, it gave me my balance back is 20. And that's exactly what I wanted, right? I think I might also be able to do this as a console.log in the old style and do the same thing, right? So the null comes from the error. So when you do the callback function approach, the function should expect 2 values. It should expect an error and a result. And so really what you do is if there's an error, you go console.error, however you want to handle that, else you're going to do console log the success. So in that instance, now it doesn't print out the null, it just prints out the 20. Okay, so that is now me setting up that environment to interact with these contracts and be able to control what version of Web3 I'm using. I hope that was useful. All right, thank you.